It's recording.
Okay, great. We're doing it. Hi, Dan.
Okay. Hey, Jordan. How are you, man?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Can you hear me okay, like volume-wise and everything?
Yes, I can.
Rock and roll.
Um, so for anyone who's watching, we really don't know what we're doing. Dan and I decided to get together and ask each other questions about saxophone. And that's really all we've done, I think, 2.5 minutes of prep, 3 minutes of prep before this.
At most.
Yeah. And you're in your living room, I'm in my living room, and everything is good and everything's set up. So I have a list of questions I wrote for you just called Gelok questions.
Very
Um,
cool.
and I don't know, do you want me to ask you a question first? Some saxophone hot
Yeah.
takes?
Why don't you do that? And let's do this. Let's go like back and forth because I've got a few over here as well. And
Okay.
so we'll go back and forth and put each other on the spot.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Dan, my first question for you, are
Yes.
ligatures are ligatures too expensive?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. It's not a question. All right. So like
I'm talking specifically,
look,
maybe we can be like as like elude name brands as possible. Maybe we can just talk about
sure.
what certain ligatures look like.
Right. Oh man, yeah. This is gonna enter into smack talk really really quickly. I will say this for my own money. Like my general rule for stuff like this is like, is it $170 worth of better? If it
Yeah,
is, then okay, great. And if it's not, then that's my guide to it. So I've made a couple of equipment purchases where I was just like, yeah, I'd be willing to pay $200 for this because it feels so much better. For ligatures, man, it doesn't. Most of the time, the stuff that I'm fighting is not stuff that the ligature is going to fix for me. Uh,
yeah,
to be perfectly honest, I haven't had a chance to really, really dig in with ligatures. Like the other thing with me with equipment is like I've got to like spend, I mean, like a while in order to like get something to like properly to get a proper take on. So I need to play something cold turkey for like a month and then go off of it to the thing that I used to be using, and then I can like accurately evaluate it.
yeah,
So for ligatures, typically whenever I've put it on, I'm like, this is like an insignificant difference. And I mean, I would say that there's usually a difference between a professional ligature and the ligature you get at a dime store or the
sure.
thing that comes with the Yamaha saxophone, just like the standard, is there a difference between a professional ligature and a rubber band? A small one, yes. Yes, but man, it's not going to fix your problems. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's my thought on it overall. If people are playing on it, I think a lot of times it's a psychological difference, and they feel a lot better on it, and so could be placebo effect. Even if it is placebo effect, if you're walking out on stage with more confidence, then I suppose that's a good thing.
sure.
But I think objectively speaking, I'm not sure that they make a huge difference. I'm playing on Van Doren MO ligatures. I'm not playing on some of the more artisanal crafted ones. And
Sure.
I don't want those people's business to go down or anything, because I know a lot of people are really satisfied with them, but I just don't see it for myself. So yeah,
Yeah. So my quick take, since that was my question to you, is that
yeah,
at least for me, in the way that I spend my money, I think that there are certain things that uh, don't require you to spend a lot of money, but that I think that it makes more sense for you to invest in.
uh-huh.
And if I have a ligature that for me works well for $40, I
Hmm.
find it difficult to rationalize spending doubled or triple that amount of money.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. It's like you like the rate of like improvement goes off. Like if you're buying a $5 ligature, 5 to 40 is like a big difference. But then like 40 to 80, 80 to 120, you're not really getting much more bang for your buck at that point.
Correct.
So, all right, cool. So my question for you,
Yes, I'm ready.
uh, what are some skills that saxophone players need but don't have?
Ooh, I think a proper warm-up routine.
Oh, okay.
Like if, okay, so brass players, they have Clark, they have Arbans. There
Uh-huh.
are books that are this thick or like thicker than my
Yeah.
coffee mug that are
Yeah.
dedicated just to warming up. We have etude books, which I feel like that's a step beyond warming up. There's that
Yeah.
one Rasher book. It's like 128 studies or something, which is close.
Uh-huh.
But I think that saxophonists need an established, malleable, I guess, depending on the situation, whether you're playing a ton of jazz this month or this week, or whether you're playing, or if you're working on the Glazunov versus something by Libby Larson, I don't know. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
something that's malleable, but something that's somewhat sort of set in stone that we can actually warm up, playing slow and listening and sort of like uh, whatever you need to do to like enter that like practice or that Zen state, maybe perhaps. At least that's what I do.
Yeah.
I spend about 20 to 30 minutes just warming up and playing very slow and kind of like
Uh-huh.
letting my saxophone warm up, letting me warm up. Um, yeah, I think we need a warm up routine for sure.
Okay. I gotta, okay. You're hitting me where I live right now because
Okay.
like I think you're totally right, but I absolutely don't warm up like I should. There's a lot of advice that I give to people, and I'm just like, all right. And if you want to see one of the many places in which my hypocrisy lies, this is one of them. I remember like one of the things that I say to my students all the time. It's like, the things that we don't want to acknowledge, but like read prep really matters. Nobody's ever really prepping the reads the way that they know they should. And then a good warm up really matters because people will come into like their lessons cold and it'll take like 15, 20 minutes before they start sounding like themselves. But yeah, me personally, I'm not disciplined in my time to that degree. I'll slap a read on and I'll start teaching, typically is what it is. What do you like? Okay, you say 20 or 30 minutes. What do you do?
Yes.
Like,
Okay. First things first, because maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but I'm pretty neurotic and I love
okay.
doing the exact same thing the exact same way because then I think it helps. Like, okay, so I'll try to like focus in on just my warm up routine.
Yeah.
If I do it the same way within reason each time, then if there's an issue, I know that it's something out of the ordinary. So I need to target it maybe in that warm up routine. So
I
I'll
love
do.
consistency. Yeah, I just consistency and continuity from day to day to day. That's how you can track actual changes, and that's how you can actually pinpoint if something is not like well, my read today or my face today is weird. It's like it's consistently here. If the
Yes.
weather is good, if it's bad, if the wind is blowing from the northwest, if the moon is out, if I'm a werewolf, like like this is always a problem, or this is always a strength.
Yeah, whether or not Mercury is or isn't in retrograde, you can still try to like warm up or like because even if you're having a weird tonguing day or your face feels silly or whatever, I think that
Mm,
if you spend time warming up or stretching,
yeah,
then you can maybe play through it or maybe just kind of work it out. So
yeah.
I'll spend about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes playing one scale super slow over and over. It's
When you
either
say super slow, how do you mean? What do you mean super slow?
about like anywhere around 60 BPM at the quarter note, just
Okay.
descending really slow and then ascending. I'll try to warm up front E, F, or F sharp depending on where I'm going.
Okay.
But it's either A major, A flat, or G. I don't know why.
Oh,
I
okay.
just
So it starts in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, starts in the middle and then I descend and then I go up
Okay.
and then I descend again. And then once I've done the scale and I land back on where I started, let's just say A
Yeah.
without the octave key, then I go chromatically down, like maybe a little bit slower, 50, 40. I really don't use a metronome at this point. And then I'll
Yeah.
sustain, I'll do low long tones on D, C sharp, or yeah, D and down, all the way to low B
Yeah.
flat, especially. I spend a lot of time down there. And then I do the same thing, but up high, is I'll start G with the octave key, and then I go chromatically up to front G and altissimo, and then I'll go up to C, but I'll sustain those pitches as well, because I think at least with a lot of my students, a lot of younger players, when they practice altissimo, it's only based on if it's in a piece or not. So I like to practice it a lot because I'd rather need it I'd rather have it and not need it versus need it and not have it.
Yeah.
So
Your
that's,
fundamental, yeah, your fundamental reserve has got to be like ideally above whatever the music is demanding of you. Because if you can
yep,
play something better than the music demands, or longer, or softer, or higher, or more articulated than the music demands, then it's just easier for you to
I
perform.
agree. I agree
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And then I do a scale pattern about anywhere from 90 to 120 if I'm
Mhm.
feeling fiery. I'll do
Yeah.
120, which is rare.
Okay.
I typically don't feel fiery. Um,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I'll do chromatic patterns. So I'll start
Okay.
middle B flat and I'll descend B flat major, and then I go up a
Yeah.
half step, and then I'll ascend B major, up a half step, descend C major, and then I repeat that pattern up until I reach B flat with the octave key. And then I go
Okay.
down and do the same thing. So that's down, up, descending, up a half step, ascending, up a half step, descending, up a half step, ascending. Or you can
Wait,
do,
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Back it up. So what's the pattern? So like,
Uh,
what do you,
so it's a set of 4 patterns. It's either down, down, up, down, or down, up. So if you're doing, say, down, up, you
uh-huh.
start on one scale and you play it just 1 octave descending. That's your
Ba ya
down.
da da dee da da da.
And then up
Yep.
a half step to B, and then
Uh-huh.
you play that, then that's your up, then that's your ascending scale.
Oh yeah, that's the 4 directions.
Yes,
Right. Yeah, that's a great exercise, and that
I
like
love
starts
it.
your brain moving. And so when you're doing this, you're just doing like you're doing like all 8 notes in the scale.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm tracking with you right now. So
And
for those of
then,
us who are,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No,
Oh, okay.
you were probably going to say something smarter than I was, so you go ahead.
Nah, well, okay. So just so like I first learned about the 4 directions in, is it like learnjazzstandards.com or something like that? But it's, yeah, so that everybody knows it's like you can take literally any pattern and it's a transposing exercise so that like he's doing scales. So in this case, if he wants to do up, it would be like C major all the way up from C to C. And
Mhm.
then it would do C sharp or D flat from D flat up to D flat, then D up to D, then E flat up to E flat. Or you could do, 1 3 5, 1 3 5, 1 3 5, 1 3 5. Or if you wanted to do it down, it would be 5 3 1, 5 3 1, 5 3. That would be down, down. And then,
Yes.
or 1 3 5 5 3 1 1 3 5 5 3 1 would be, I guess, up and then down. So you're always moving up a half step or moving down a half step. And then the pattern is either going up the pattern or it's going down the pattern, depending on which iteration you're doing. And it's a total brain melting.
Yes.
It's great for flexibility. It's absolutely wonderful flexibility. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite warm-up exercises, or just
Yeah.
exercises in general, because it's so malleable. You have
Mm-hmm.
your skeletal form, which essentially is just muscle confusion, or being able to switch between, literally, if you're doing C and C sharp or C and D flat, no sharps, no flats, all sharps, all flats, right?
Yeah.
So
Right. Right.
well, not all flats, but
Yeah.
it ends up helping my fingers and my dexterity and my brain moving from scale to scale, and it helps me think of them as more so of patterns as opposed to which accidental am I playing, which key I'm in, which key am I in.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And then you can also do it. What I've been doing is like also scales in thirds, down, up, or also descending. Say you're working on, I don't know, harmonic minors all of a sudden, and
Yeah.
you want to work. You can do it with harmonic minors. You can pair different types of scales: descending
Yeah.
major, ascending harmonic minor,
Oof.
descending
Okay.
jazz
Oh.
melodic minor.
Oh. Yeah. So that. Oh, hang on a second. I got my horn right here. Hang on. I'm gonna try
Okay.
one of these things. Hang on. This is too good, man. This is the quality content that everybody is signing up for. All right. Okay. So give me that exercise again. So we're gonna do an ascending major scale and then what, a descending harmonic minor? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I was doing this pattern a lot this time last year.
Okay. So I'm gonna start on an F. So
Okay.
that'll be F sharp, F major ascending, and then F sharp harmonic minor descending, and then G major ascending, and then A flat harmonic minor descending. Okay.
Yes.
Gosh, yeah, okay, that, that, okay, the thing that I love about transposition at all, I noticed this maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I started to like do more patterns because I'm predominantly a classical player.
Yeah, as am I.
Yeah, and so like this is, I remember I took a David Baker class in undergrad. David he passed away a few years ago. Just an amazing jazz pedagogue. I think he started the first jazz degree in the country. I cannot remember, but
Holy smokes.
yeah, he was just like, so when I got there, he was an older dude and he had played with Dizzy Gillespie and he played with JJ. He was a trombone player initially, but then got into a wreck, messed up his face. And by that point, he was more of an educator. And so he picked up cello and he started playing jazz cello. And he was taking cello lessons from Janos Starker because they were both at IU. And so, I mean, it's just absurd. But he taught Jamie Aebersold, and
wow.
he taught like the Brecker brothers a little bit, and it just super just influential in just jazz pedagogy. But he had us doing transposition. So we would do the ba ba do ba ya da, the Indiana bebop, or ba ba do ba ya ba da ba do ba ya nada, which I went to IU and studied jazz with David Baker is the joke. It's like this 2/5 pattern that you'd have to do. And so I would do a little bit of that my junior year, and my technique like went through the roof when I started doing it. But anyway, fast forward like 15 years later, I'm like, I should be able to do this. And I noticed that like when I was transposing, if I would try to play 1 3 5 1 or something like that in different keys, I could do it equally fast on piano that I could do on saxophone, and I'm not a good pianist.
Yeah,
so
same.
the thing that was slowing me down wasn't technique. It was like my brain doing the math, the mental calculations. And I also noticed that like that same, the book that you mentioned, the Rosher 158 or whatever it is, 28, I can't remember. Okay, so that book is just like transpositions basically. And I noticed that I could sight read it faster than I could logically carry out the pattern.
Sure.
And so I'm like, okay, well, then that means that my main difficulty is like trying to like conceptualize the next one and being able to move from thing to thing to thing. So there's a mental block here. So I started doing these transpositions, and it was just, it's so foreign from what we typically are required to do in classical playing. But man, I felt great when I was doing this. Like my face felt great. My voicing felt great. I feel like I'm more intuitive with the instrument, like I'm more in touch with it. And yeah, my brain is catching up to my hands, which I think is like a super valuable thing, even as a classical player.
Oh yeah, like I've started borrowing a lot. One of my colleagues at OSU is a heavy jazz player, and he was doing a ton of patterns, and it just clicked. And I'm like, why do we like we've developed this weird invisible line with things that only jazz players are allowed to practice versus classical players? And it's if you zoom out a little bit, I mean, we're all musicians, right? So why? I mean, and like
allegedly,
yeah, kind of. We're all, and if you zoom out even farther, I think we're all just kind of playing pretend. But then if you zoom in one level before then, it's like a lot of the good pieces of rep for us have been is based on thievery from other instruments. The Marcello oboe concerto.
Yeah, right.
Like I love that piece. It's one of my favorite pieces in our rep, even though it's not for us. So I was thinking, well, why not practice patterns in all 12 keys? I mean, if I have my like classical setup on, or just my non-jazz setup on, or my warmer setup rather, then
what you want. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But like, why can't I practice patterns, arpeggios, broken arpeggios, scales, in all 12 keys? And it's helped. I've found myself practicing fundamentals and doing these warm-up routines way more than actually practicing rep, but it's made playing rep and sight reading rep significantly easier, because doing all these patterns, even like especially when you're playing, or even if you're just doing descending major scales and ascending major scales, you have to be thinking about the next scale that you're going to be playing, or the next pattern you're playing, before you're done with that pattern. So you're constantly looking ahead, like when you're sight reading as well, which is like you have to learn how to look where you are, or be where you are, but be like 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you are right at that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's yeah, I can't say it any better than you just did. It's like your brain has to split, and you have to both do the thing you're doing, and you have to mentally be getting ready to do the next thing. And that may be, honestly, whenever classical players are trying to improvise,
Yeah, here we go.
That may be the hardest thing for them. That's one of the difficult things for me. It's like, all right, I'm approaching the end of this, C dominant chord, and in a second I'm going to have an F sharp half diminished chord, and then I land on the F sharp half diminished chord, and it takes me a moment to go, where am I now? The ability to shift and to find a way that like we can go like, this is something that I continue to work on in my jazz playing. At the end, like the idea of like guide tones and like being able to say, all right, at the end of that chord, for instance, I'm on a B flat. I'm on the seventh of C7.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to an F sharp half diminished. Okay, well then I've got an A right next to it, or I've got a C right above it. So I'm going to go from B flat to C, or I'm going to go from B flat to A, instead of going wherever I am to just jump to the tonic. Like the
Yeah,
ability
yeah.
to think ahead is super important, and these exercises are the thing that gives us that ability to like have enough awareness that we're not just doing this and focusing on like this 1 millisecond of time, but you can actually think about where you've just been, where you are now, and where you're going at the same time. There's more of an awareness.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for your next question?
Yes, go.
Okay, do you want to do one more each?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have two that I like. Okay, pick one or three, Dan.
3.
Okay. How do you feel about um, people peddling or pushing particular equipment, or maybe suggesting for their studio, well, I like one mouthpiece over this mouthpiece, and I think you need, or this horn or whatever else?
Right. Okay. I don't do that approach myself, but I am sympathetic towards people who do it, and here is why. I don't think
Ready?
it's the best way of doing it. I think that uh, from from my perspective, I think that we need to have a good appreciation of what works best on everybody else's face.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
With
Yep.
I mean, particularly within classical, there's a certain sound that we're looking for. Like we're looking for a narrow thing. In jazz, the sound is wider, but I would say that there are limits. Like for instance, if you play with a classical sound in a jazz setting, it's not going to work. And so like jazz players are big on, well, we're a lot more inclusive than classical are, and that's true. I mean, like, you take Kenny Garrett and you take Paul Desmond, and you're like, yeah, both of these have good jazz sounds. But within classical, what you're shooting for is a more narrow, restricted range, which is sort of, closer to the way that like violin or clarinet would do it. Like there's still a range of acceptable good sound, but there's different types. We're maybe a little bit more restrictive than like violin is in classical saxophone. So with that considered, I think that in order to get a good sound, a sound that's idiomatic and a sound that is representative of who we are as a player, I think we need to encourage a little bit of like equipment diversity. So like my students, let's see, we're playing mouthpieces like I'm on an S90. A bunch of my students are on AL3s. Some of them are on concepts, which I
Yeah.
really don't like the alto concept. I tried it for 9 months and I didn't like it at all. The soprano concept is like a dream come true and fixed all my problems and cured my dyslexia. I mean, it's glorious and golden and beautiful. But I didn't like the alto one. But I've got a bunch of students that sound good on it. Even though I was like, don't use it, they started. And I'm like, you sound fine. So I'm going to shut up and just let you play. They've got Selmer saxophones. They've got Yamaha saxophones. They've got Yanagasawa saxophones. So I've got a couple of kids with Mac saxes. They're using Van Doren reeds. They're using D'Addario reeds. They're using Ligier reeds. And I have my preferences, but the main thing is as long as they sound good, that's what I'm about. Now, for the players that are, or the teachers that are like, yep, you got to use a Series 3 and you got to use an S90 mouthpiece and you've got to use a Van Doren or whatever, this sort of thing. I'm just picking stuff,
Sure.
not like thinking of anybody in particular. Disclaimer. Yeah. While I say really offensive things, I need to make sure that I'm not trying to be offensive to you directly.
Yeah.
If I am, I'll call you out by name and be like, hey, you're a jerk and here's why. No, I think a lot of times, because I was like this for a while, when you have consistent equipment, you as a teacher can understand the limitations of that equipment and the proclivities of that equipment. So I know that at this certain range, this mouthpiece is going to respond this way. And when it doesn't respond this way, then I know that it has something to do with your face doing this.
Yeah.
So when a student comes in and like, hey, I bought this, I want to buy this new saxophone that's cheaper than the others, but it's still a professional model. The first thing I'll say is like, well, I don't know how that instrument is going to age. I don't know what the intonation tendencies of that instrument are. I don't know what the tone challenges of that instrument are going to be. So I would encourage you away from that simply because I don't know how it's going to respond. I mean, we can deal with the big things, but you may be fighting your equipment and I'll never know it because I'm not playing on it.
Yeah.
So if a teacher is like, look, we're just, for the sake of simplicity, I want you all to get this equipment, which I know for sure works, and I know the track record of it, and I have a greater breadth of knowledge on these pieces of equipment, then, I mean, I'm not gonna give that guy too hard of a time for requiring his students. Like I said, it's not ideal for me, and I think it takes a lot of flexibility to be able to say, yeah, bring in whatever you want.
Mhm.
I don't think that's wise either. It's like, sometimes students need to gain discernment. It's like, I'm sorry, there's a certain saxophone that you're playing on that's just not as good as, I recommend Yamaha and Yanagasawa and Selmers pretty much. And I'll say, like, there are other horns that are good, but if you're asking me what to buy, I would say grab one of these three.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a long and rambling answer, but that's what I think of people that are like, you must choose this. There are some people that are jerks and they're just like, no, it's like the other like everything is inferior to a Selmer Series 3.
Yeah.
Every other brand, every other model is inferior. And I don't want to teach you unless you have the very best. There's something wrong with that attitude for sure. But I'm going to choose to assume that if somebody picks a certain set of equipment and says everybody's got to get it, I think that they're probably doing it in order to streamline their teaching and make sure that they have a good control, like a quality control over what everybody's playing, and that they can teach evenly across all of their students. I'm going to assume that that's why they're doing it.
And I think what's nice is that the whole my studio, my horn choice, and there's really no budging. I think that there's a trend recently where that's becoming more so of an antiquated thing, which is good. But I know
Yeah.
that for sure used to be a thing, even when I was an undergrad, which I mean wasn't way too long ago, but it was long enough ago. It was still like I knew certain friends of mine from high school or whatever else or meeting through conferences and stuff. They're like, yeah, I have to sell my really nice X model horn to buy Y model horn because my professor, they don't want to teach on anything other than that. And I always thought that was a little bit silly, but I haven't heard much of that anymore, which is good.
That's good. Yeah, I mean,
positive.
there's also like social pressure. Like you show up at certain studios and like all the other kids have this horn and you're a freshman. You're like, oh no, they're not gonna. Nobody's gonna talk to me. I won't have anybody to sit with at lunch. There's that. I think that also professors need to be realistic about like the financial challenges of students.
Oh yeah.
Selling a horn to buy another horn, okay, sure. When it's all said and done, you may have to spend an extra few $1,000s, but that may be an extra few $1,000s they don't have.
Yep.
It's a complicated equation.
It is, and like I think that I've had to realize this, not the hard way, but I've realized this like teaching in southeastern Ohio, which from some of the other universities in metropolitan areas, Chicago, New York,
Houston,
it's the socioeconomic class is lower, and
yes.
what I've realized is that like picking up a great intermediate horn, I know that will serve it will serve my students well for a very long time, but also having to like let go my weird preconceived notions and kind of trivial thoughts I had about like what equipment was good versus bad, which is in and of itself pretty arbitrary. I had some students playing on a Caravan mouthpiece, sounded awesome. it was warm, it was rich, but because of the way that his face was, like you were saying earlier, how a lot of it depends on the student's face. He did not sound very good on a concept. He didn't sound
Yeah.
very good on either an S80 or
Huh.
an S90. But on the Caravan, he sounded great. Switching up ligature choices and all this stuff, like
Yeah.
so, like realizing that not all people are created equal, and not all saxophonists' face or musicians' faces are equal as well. I think we have to be like whatever it ends up taking a little bit more time because there's more trial and error from student to student.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's worth it, right? When a student starts to enjoy the way they sound, or when playing the saxophone becomes to physically feel easy, and there's no
Yes.
tension and there's no spittiness or reediness, regardless of your setup, then it's like, well, great. It's like liking the color of your car,
Yeah.
um, liking the way that your saxophone feels and the way it plays. So
Yeah. There's so much else that makes the instrument difficult. So if we have something where it starts to flow naturally, something is especially so core and foundational as your sound,
yeah.
and how easy it is to play, how physically it feels. Another thought that just occurred to me that people sort of hold on to these things as a instrument, as a classical instrument, the classical side of saxophone playing compared to other classical instruments. And we don't have that long and that rich of a history. And so we tend to cling to the tradition that we do have. And I can sympathize with that very much. I'm a very, conservative personality. So it's like, if I went through school and my teachers, whom I trust, and I trust their discernment and I trust their taste more than I trust my own, if they're saying these are the things to use and these are the things that were handed down to us, then I am more prone to hold on to that and pass that on to my students. Because we don't have an established classical tradition the way that piano does, or the way that cello does, or the way that violin does. So we tend to hold on to the things that we do because we, to a degree, are still kind of struggling for legitimacy
Oh
within
yeah.
classical music. And so there is less of a sense of experimentation. There's more of a sense of proving that we belong and reinforcing that we belong. And so there are some players and teachers that are really not interested in experimentation on these things. I think we're getting more secure. And so it's more appropriate to experiment, and
Yeah,
people are
sure.
starting to relax a little bit. I noticed that I just as my personal insecurities have gone away over the last 15 years of teaching, I'm starting to be much more secure with people trying crazier things.
Hmm.
Because, I don't need to maintain so tight a control over certain things anymore.
Yeah.
And that's like a personal security thing. Um, yeah. So I guess personal insecurities go into it, and just the tradition of the instrument, where we've come from, and wanting to pass down what our teachers have told us. Personalities matter, history and pedigree matters. So I guess all these things are sort of lumped into it.
Sure. I agree.
Yeah. So although I think we can all agree that the best reed is flavor reeds.
Yes. Yeah. I really like they had one that was just suntan lotion, which was good. They have a gravy one for the holidays, which is nice. Um, I'm waiting for next year. I've been emailing back and forth with the CEO of McDonald's. We're going to do a Shamrock Shake for this time next year, which would be
My
good.
favorite flavors are turtle and
Yeah.
feldspar
Yeah.
and bedpost. Those are my
Mm.
favorite flavors of flavor reeds. So
Kind of a
I
you. So I didn't realize that you kind of picked the more highfalutin ones. That's good.
oh my goodness. Woo. Okay, yeah. Sorry to anybody who uses. No, actually, I'm not apologizing to anybody who uses flavor reeds. You really need to.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
there. I think that
Uh,
we can. It's safe to say there are some pieces of equipment that aren't necessary, and flavor reads are close to the top of the list.
yeah.
Unless you make your own
Poor
at home,
guys.
then that's
Poor
fine.
guys. Yeah, that's right. We're all. Yeah. All right. So you want one more from me?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Overrated pieces of standard rep. Go.
Whoo. So okay, so I think that a lot of rep gets, now bear with me. A lot of rep gets the whole, I don't know how far back a reference I can make. It suffers from what's the word? The Chumbawamba effect, or I guess the new equivalent could be the Adele effect, where arguably it's all like its own thing, and they're making their music and they're doing their thing, but they end up being ruined by, I'm also going to be dating myself, the radio, or I guess just being overplayed. So for Chumbawamba, they were maybe
Yeah.
ruined by MTV. For Adele,
Okay.
she and I mean, her career is not ruined by any stretch of the imagination. She can make it rain, but I mean, in terms of like what's overdoing, or what's doing Adele in, your Dillards,
Okay.
your J.C. Penney's, your
Ah,
Marshalls, right?
yes.
So
Yeah.
if you literally can't go into any store without hearing Adele, then I mean that store. But that's
Yeah.
where that's the same sort of theory or effect that I think pieces of rep have, where
Yeah.
they're still excellent. They're great pieces of rep. They exist for a reason. They became standards for a reason. New pieces
Yeah.
become new standards for a reason. And it seems like every few years we have these big, huge pieces that end up like really exciting all saxophonists, and it's great. Like I
Yeah.
think the newest one being Fuzzy Bird.
Sure.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so I don't necessarily, like, in my opinion, I don't think there are overrated pieces, because again,
Hmm.
just like art, if it means something to you, great, and that's really all that matters. Um, but I think that there are definitely overperformed pieces,
Hmm.
and which is no fault of the composer or the musician. It just ends
Right.
up happening because it's
Yeah. Sure.
like,
Sure.
um, I don't know, like young students or older students or professionals or anywhere in between wanting to be with it or work on stuff that's new and exciting. It's everyone's kind of doing the exact same thing at once. So I think
Yeah.
overrated, I don't have any,
Okay.
but overperformed and over programmed, yes, many.
Okay.
And I
So
think,
what,
oh, go ahead.
from your perspective, like we need the names of a couple of pieces that you're sick of.
Okay, I'm, I'm nervous to even say I'm
Okay.
sick of them.
Let me not put you on the spot here
Okay.
because I'll go ahead and volunteer this information. There are years in which I'm like, nobody's playing the Muchinsky sonata.
Oh, sure.
I can't take it anymore. Nobody's like, I'm on a very, like the last, I guess, 18 months, I've been on a very anti-Ebert kick. And
Oh,
before
sure.
that, it was a very anti-Glazunov thing because I'm just like, guys, I just, I just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to learn. And I'll still end up teaching it because somebody will want to play for a recital, or somebody really at that stage in their development, like the best thing for them to do is to pick up the Muchinsky or something like that. But it's like, nobody gets to choose to play the Muchinsky right now. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. So
I
yeah.
think then, okay, then I will be a bad boy by association as well. I think that and picture me putting on sunglasses right now because I feel this is a
Mm-hmm.
very cool thing that we're doing. Um,
Yes.
I think that for me, I work with a lot of younger students,
Mm.
and I would like to not hear the Haydn for a while. And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would I
Absolutely.
would really like to maybe take a Ben Cresciuto break, um, or even
Wait, which one? Which piece?
the Ben Cresciuto.
I don't know that. What is that?
Oh, I think it's the Serenade. I think it's Ben Cresciuto's Serenade, which
Okay.
maybe, hey, a piece that uh, I'm not thrilled to hear for a while could be a piece that you might be. Let me look it up here.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, that's fine. I mean, we can trade it like the information afterwards, and I'll go find it. I'm
okay,
always looking for pieces that are ideal for younger students because it's like there are a bunch of students that are like not quite ready for the Creston yet, and
sure.
it might take a few years before they're ready for that. And so I'm looking for pieces that are in that early college or just pre-college sort of stage. So that might be a good one. Ben
It's
Cresciuto. Okay.
the
Yeah.
Ben Cresciuto Serenade for solo alto saxophone.
Okay, gotcha.
And then also, I think it's the Concertino or something by Saint-Gelais. I'm also a little bit over.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, sure, sure.
but that's it for me. Especially like there's also a difference of hearing rep, whether it's at a recital or something, but then hearing rep in a small office with a student ends up being
Yeah, right.
like you can really hear it in a small room.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Okay, follow-up question.
Okay.
What are underrepresented pieces or underappreciated pieces or hidden gems? What would you like to hear more of, or what do people need to know about? This can be not standard rep. This can be new things that you're into. Uh, yeah.
I think okay for an older piece. Um, there's the Frank Erickson Concerto, which I don't think many
I've
saxophonists know about.
I've heard of this, but I don't think I've ever looked at it.
It's such an awesome piece. It's like painfully American. It's one huge
Okay.
movement. There's these expansive altissimo sections, and they're like really they're contextualized perfectly. They're always approached diatonically, and
Oh,
they're
good.
huge and loud and big. And so the Frank Erickson Concerto I think needs to be performed more because it's fun.
Okay.
It's not too terribly demanding, and it's really pretty.
Are we talking about like a mid 20th century American tonality, like a Hartley, a Creston,
Um,
Haydn? Like, what are
more,
we looking at?
I think it's actually a pretty good mix between like a Haydn and a Creston. Um,
Okay.
I think it's like from the 60s. I think it's 67 or 60 something or other. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
got you. I got you.
and then I would say for new music, um, I honestly haven't performed a ton of new music
Hmm.
in the last year or two, but I don't know. I'm looking for things that friends or colleagues or other younger musicians or young composers are writing, and I
Hmm.
try to program it if I can. What
Sure.
about you?
Gotcha. Blah, 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 blah. So let's see. I have really enjoyed working on Zupkos in Transit recently with one of my students. It's
Okay.
very difficult, and you got to have a pianist that's really committed to it because it's like there's a lot of interaction between the two, but I think it's extraordinarily well written. Um, and let's see, his older things. I think I'd like to hear. Well, one, I'd like to check in some of the other stuff that DeCrook has written because I only know the
Oh
sonata,
yeah.
and I think the sonata is wonderful, like wonderful, wonderful piece. Uh, but and I know that she wrote like dozens of others, and I haven't like checked them out yet. So I'd like to hear what's coming from that. And then there's like a couple of others like the the sonatine by I can't remember his name. Starts with a P, maybe.
Uh, Paul, Peter,
No. Yeah, I'm
Patrice.
blanking on it. Yes, yeah, Patrice. It's Patrice. No, I'm blanking on it. It's probably going to be like, oh yeah, it starts with a T or an S. It's totally unrelated. Yeah, there's. I mean, as far as French standard rep is concerned, I'm kind of tired of a lot of it, just because it's been programmed a lot in my studio in the last 5-6 years.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I like the Haydn diversion a lot,
sure.
but I don't like the Haydn solo very much. And I like the Haydn sonata as long as we're working closely with a pianist,
Sure.
because that makes that piece make so much more sense. And it doesn't make sense if you're just playing it by yourself. It's really clunky otherwise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny. I wasn't prepared to put myself on the spot with the same question. I'll have to think about that a little bit more. Like, under programmed pieces of music. I like the Franck Sonata a whole bunch,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
that's we're ripping it off, of course, but I think that works really well. Especially, I've played the first and fourth movements, and I think those work extremely well for saxophone. But I've got a couple of students that are working on them.
Oh, early rep two. I'm a huge fan of the Schulhoff Sonata.
Oh, the Hot Sonata.
I love
Yeah,
it. I love it.
that's another piece that was a blind spot for me that I hadn't really worked on until like this year or something, and it's a great piece, and the piano
I
part's
agree.
really cool too, and it's like it's really fun, and it's you can get a little bit more open with like this is kind of half jazz, half classical. So you can be a little bit more free with it. But it's
Yes.
fun to play and it's cool sounding.
And it looks, I think it's a good piece, especially for younger players, because it looks really hard. And there's a lot of really like, it's highly
Yeah.
syncopated, but it's fairly idiomatic. I don't know. I feel like everything just kind of makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so this other piece is driving me nuts. I'm gonna look up a
It's not Adele or Chumbawamba, is it?
no, it's not
Okay.
Chumbawamba. By the way, I think the Chumbawamba effect is probably the most important thing that we've done today. I
I think
think
so
that is
too.
the most important thing. Where is I'm looking up? I'm using a different computer than I usually do, so I don't have my rep list on my computer right now. So never mind.
Oh, that's
I'll
fine.
have to We'll have to put this in the show notes. Like
Oh,
the piece that
sure.
Gelok was thinking of was this. It was the Creston Concerto, not the Creston Concerto. Not what I'm thinking of. Yeah, yeah, man. This is pretty cool.
I agree.
We should do this more.
Yeah, maybe we'll, depending on how this goes, or if this goes, or if anyone
Yeah,
even likes it or whatever, or if there's
yeah,
not too many people going like, how did you not say this piece?
yeah.
Or
Right.
maybe we just turn comments off altogether because, yeah, okay, there's literally thousands of pieces that we could have said.
I don't know. It's if this goes up on YouTube, every time I get a ding from like, oh, you have a new comment, I'm like 50%. This is going to be somebody doing something really, really mean and really negative. And it's funny. It's a very good exercise for us because it's like, you know, people are like unabashedly like not just critical but condescending on
Oh, yeah.
YouTube. I mean, people are jerks on Instagram. They're relatively straightforward, and other things like the YouTube comments are like ruthless, man. So like every time I get a ding, I'm like, this could be good, or this could be just like somebody furious at me. So it's I'm fine with it at this point. It's okay.
I honestly, and I think that I realize that I'm in control of my own universe, and
Yes.
if I choose to let a YouTube comment ruin my day, week, night, year, then maybe I have some reevaluating to do.
Stoicism for the win. You can
Yeah.
control things that you can control. You control and care about those things. You can't control what people say on YouTube. That's a quote from Marcus Aurelius. You can't control what people say on YouTube. So
See,
he's very, very forward thinking, that man.
I always got that confused with Socrates, but yeah, I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely Marcus Aurelius. I'll find the quote
Okay.
for you later. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe we do more of these.
Yeah,
And
man. If people are into it, then yeah, this is fun. So I'd
I
be
agree.
totally down for this. Yeah,
And it's actually pretty easy. All I have to do is just go to my living room and, it's
yeah,
right here. It's nice.
that's cool. Right
Well,
there, man. Yeah.
Dan, thank you very much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Good to
Jordan.
hang out. And
Yeah, you too, man. This is cool.
I hope when I'm going to hit stop recording and hopefully it doesn't break it.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you watched, 1, 2, 3.